The odd thing was, he had no imagination. He was hopeless at constructing anything new or coming up with inventive modifications to make something work better. He was strictly a repairman. The only thing that could get Tony booted off the ship before you could say Imelda Marcos's outlandish shoe collection would be a positive result on the obligatory annual HIV test. With the high-spirited partner-swapping shoreside and below decks, the company couldn't afford to be seen as a breeding ground for AIDS. Not with 150 upper-deck suites coddling political conservatives and industrial magnates. Noah prayed that Tony devoted as much attention to protecting his dick as he did to maintaining the mechanical innards of the Coral Dynasty. Tony winced as Noah pulled the last of the bandage away from the sutured wound. "Looks great, my friend. No bleeding, no infection." The man let out a long breath of relief. "Let me see you curl your fingers into your palm." Noah checked the strength of Tony's grip by pulling against the digits. "Good. Now straighten them." Tony beamed shyly and dropped his gaze. He understood mechanics and could tell his hand was going to be fine. No harm done. He looked around the room, his eyes questioning. "No nurses helping today, Doc?" Anya and Cornelia, still under 30, hailed from Amsterdam. Not only competent, they were open-minded and discreet, qualities he'd recognized when he'd hired them on behalf of the cruise line 3 months earlier. Aboard the Coral Dynasty, discretion mattered more than almost anything else, except perhaps for a steady flow of vintage champagne above stairs and draft beer below. "They're out in a cabin call." Actually, they were checking on a crew member who'd been wobbly on his feet with infectious mononucleosis for the past couple of days. One of his cabin mates had called to say that Jung looked worse and wasn't talking. Noah's stomach tightened. It wouldn't have happened a third time, would it? He told himself that no, the odds against it were way too high, and a good month had passed since the others. He completed Tony's dressing, sent him on his way, and then scribbled a note on the chart, grateful not to be encumbered with the electronic medical record plaguing his onshore colleagues. You couldn't beat the high seas for certain efficiencies, like the brief handwritten note. Here in international waters, he was free to work for the direct benefit of his patients and give special attention to those on his endangered list. He had no need to please cadres of lawmakers and petty bureaucrats pontificating from their computers in cozy offices in cities like Toronto, Louisville, and Henley-on-Thames. But when he looked up and saw Anya's stricken face in the doorway, he nearly had to put his head between his knees. On the face of it, the cause of Jung Lee's symptoms had seemed clear. Infectious mononucleosis was a rite of passage for a young man of 27. But Noah had crossed his fingers when he'd given the affable sound and light technician the diagnosis. Within the past 6 weeks, 2 other crew members, Peng, an apprentice in the engine room, and Wu, an assistant in the laundry, had died in their cabins just a day or 2 after Noah had told them that they had a touch of infectious mono. He'd promised them the disease would run its course and the symptoms would resolve. They might be tired for a few weeks, but eventually they'd be as good as new. Horrified by their unexpected deaths, he scrutinized their bodies here in the treatment room. He'd never been trained to carry out a formal autopsy like a pathologist, so he stopped short of slicing into their body cavities. Instead, he performed head-to-toe physical examinations and recorded his findings. The corpse of Peng, the first man to die, revealed the swollen glands and enlarged spleen Noah's fingers had felt when the mechanic had presented 2 days earlier at sick parade. But he found nothing else amiss. No needle tracks, no trauma, no buttery xanthelasma around the eyes to suggest a premature heart attack from high cholesterol. Noah wrote infectious mononucleosis on Peng's notification of death form. Infectious mono